Welcome, listener, to Lost and Searching. I'm your host, Devin, and today we're speaking to Gavin Presman. Gavin is a leadership coach and a best-selling author known for his expertise in sales leadership and driving high-performance growth. As someone who uses a lot of qualitative tools that is really people first, Gavin has a real expertise and a quality of conversation and the thinking that helps bring out the person within and work on that first to recognize just how much of an impact that makes in our external world around us. So get ready to learn more about how we're all actually salespeople, even if we don't realize it, how and why sales makes many people feel kind of icky and gross and what to do about it, what it really means to be a salesperson and the kind of value you need to be delivering, how to connect with other people empathetically, how to start off great sales related conversations, the link that all of this has to leadership and authentic leadership so that you can show up as the best leader you can be and enroll others into the ideas that you want them to be enrolled into, and so much more. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Enjoy the journey. Can you describe that every person is a salesperson? What do you mean by that?
So it's not an idea of my own. It's an idea that comes from Daniel Pink in a book that's probably much better researched than my first book called To Sell is Human, where he proposes this idea, which I repeat really in the book, that in essence, to produce results in life, whether with your business, with your family, with your friends, with your community, you have to be able to persuade people to say yes. The act of selling is the act of understanding somebody to the point where you can help them to make a decision. That's my philosophy around selling. And therefore, we all do it in our life. We all do it to a certain extent. We've all managed to persuade someone, to enroll someone into an idea we've had. And to the extent that we're able to do that naturally is the extent we're able to succeed in whatever project we're in. So, your request for me to come and join you today was a pitch. It was a sales process. Now, if we take that as an example, because there was a high level of trust that already existed between the two, because there wasn't just trust, there was liking, it was easy for me to say yes. But also the way you crafted that email, the intention you had behind the email helped me to easily say yes. And I suppose that's what I've always found fascinating about sales, because from literally the time I was 13 or 14, I just wanted to know why and how do people say yes. And to a certain extent, as a youngster, particularly as a kid, and partly this was the dating game, I was just fascinated by it, partly because I just wanted to know, can I get a yes?
Speaking of things starting out in childhood, how do you feel like your childhood influenced the person you became, what you went on to do, the way life looks right now?
I mean, clearly so much. And one of the things I often do with leaders, I think to understand someone, if you can understand their childhood, I'm a father now, so I'm a father now, and understanding my kids' childhood helps me to understand them. But from my childhood, so I was the youngest of four, which again is a brilliant question to ask people. What's your sibling order and how did that impact you? I was the youngest of four, two working parents, very, very brilliant, ambitious mother, very, very brilliant and not so ambitious father. A mother that was brought up in a probably what we might call it lower middle class, but like a real hard-working middle class family. Father brought up in a very privileged upper middle class family. And so my father was more interested in politics, making a difference, changing the world. My mum was super interested in that, very fierce feminist, but also interested in a career and concerned about financially leaving stuff behind and financially holding the family together. So a matriarch that really ran the house, and a very strong sense. We were socialists. It was a socialist, and we once went to family therapy when we were quite young, and the therapist said, like, this isn't a family. This is a democracy or a parliament or something. And he thought that was like he thought he was criticizing us. So we kind of thought, well, obviously, wouldn't that be the right thing? Wouldn't we supposed to have a voice? So we all had a voice. We all debated. We discussed. We sat around the table and argue, but without a sense that argument was saying it was wrong. Like in the Jewish tradition, you almost have to argue in order to learn. So Torah study, the study of the Jewish ancient texts, is done by taking a bit of text and then in pairs usually arguing about it, like saying, well, what about this? And in the commentaries, the great commentaries, are rabbis arguing about, well, it means this, no, it means that, but you could interpret it as that. Just one of the sort of jokes we'd have as kids was like making up different reasons for things. I still do them like this, like make up the reason why that tradition exists. You try and find a source for it, make up the source for it. So that was a big influence on me. And then, of course, having 3 brothers and sisters, I had 2 brothers and 1 sister, they were a huge influence on me as well as all the environment.
And speaking of that environment, we're recording this. This is a bit different today. I love this. We're in the beautiful Camden Loch. Thank you very much for inviting me down to where you work with this fantastic view. And you mentioned to me on the way up here that this is your old stomping ground. What do you mean by that? Tell us the story. Tell us how you came full circle back here to Camden Loch and where everything started.
So my parents moved a lot as kids. My mum was very ambitious for us educationally, but she was also deeply committed to comprehensive education. So she'd move us to try and get us into the more progressive schools. And we moved from Queen's Park to West Hampstead to get us into Hampstead Comprehensive, which is not so far from here.
Okay.
My mum was also then the headmistress of Quinton Kynaston School, which is also not so far from here. It's probably about 1 kilometre up the road. Hampstead's probably 2 kilometres up the road. And this is where we came on a Saturday. Like before, so Dingwalls, which is just there.
Yes.
Before we were old enough to go in the front door, we knew the way in the back door, and we would go in there and just kind of hang out. We weren't drinking. We didn't probably have enough money to buy drinks. We'd just be in, and it was blues and then reggae. And then eventually, when we got older, Giles Peterson would have a Sunday gig there, and we would go. Then some of my first jobs were working in the market here, fly pitching outside.
What's that? What's fly pitching?
Fly pitching is where you set up a stall without authority.
Okay.
So I used to do that a lot when I was at school. I would find things to sell, on bonfire night. Mate, before those Illuminous necklaces were ready made, we would make these Illuminous necklaces by cutting up.
Very scrappy.
Yeah. And in fact, we came full circle into having an office here is because my friend who runs the Media Eye was looking for an office. We found this. We were both connected to this area, her particularly, because her first business when we were together as teenagers was selling bagels, again in the street, again fly pitching around here. So there were lots of really trendy bagel bars in Camden now, but the first who ever sold bagels was Caroline.
She can stake her claim to that.
Absolutely. The first bagels in Camden were brought from the East End.
You almost started your career before you started your career in something that required you putting your foot forward to do what you wanted to do, to try something out, to make it happen very scrappy, which is a type of leadership. It's not necessarily top-down leadership, but it's self-leadership going towards peer-to-peer leadership or even bottom-up leadership. How do you feel like these experiences have affected what it means to you to be a leader, or your understanding of what leadership is?
I left school without any, well, not without any qualification. I got O level as the equivalent of GCSE. In the middle of my sixth form, I decided I didn't want to go to university.
Yeah.
Didn't want to university. I wanted to trade. I actually wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a book about Richard Branson on entrepreneurship. I don't know really. I still don't know. You never know. Or was it just that was my excuse? I thought my parents would accept that. And my mum was horrified at me. Absolutely, like, and my dad was quiet about it and was supportive just because he realized I had made that decision.
Yeah.
But leaving school, but I also didn't, when I went to university, I went to visit Oxford, which is where my parents wanted me to go and my dad had gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought this is just too conformist for me. And
Interesting.
the truth is, and so I ran my own business from the age of 17. And while I have had some, probably 10 years at the beginning of my career working for media companies, I worked for photocopy companies as well, and then recently I spent a couple of years working for people. I am not able to really take instructions very well. Recently I was on a program where we were talking about neurodiversity, and I found the concept of persistent avoidance syndrome, which I've self-diagnosed. I mean, I've been diagnosed officially with ADHD, and I know, but I suppose, and this is the thing that I find really fascinating, if I'd known that as a kid, and if my teachers had known that, probably would have been much better in education. I finally did a degree. I did a degree in law eventually, that would have been much easier had I understood my neurodiversities. But I found and still find it very difficult to take instruction.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore the best place for me was running my own thing, enjoying the freedom of doing that, and being self-motivated. And I guess it was out of a necessity that I created an understanding of how I motivated myself.
What is leadership for you then, considering that?
For me, leadership, because I guess my model of leadership therefore is my family, and my model is leadership also people I have been led by in different ways. And I'm sure, to me, leadership is supporting the team, creating an environment of trust that enables you to have healthy conversations and healthy conflict, that enables you to share commitments and rely on each other. And I'm talking to, that model of leadership. Lencioni talks about this idea of a punctual team being one that is built on a foundation of trust and is able to have healthy conflict and therefore commitment and accountability and shared collective results. But I've always been inspired by leaders who let me in and empowered me by trusting me. And so for me, it naturally falls on the more transformational style of leadership, which empowers and allows people to thrive and succeed.
What is that style of leadership? How does that manifest? What does it look like?
So what it looks like is creating an environment where people feel trusted, where people admit their mistakes very quickly, where they are encouraged to experiment. They're also allowed to work at their own pace with a high level of autonomy and an encouragement of mastery. So an encouragement of learning and doing new and different things. And therefore it's often called transformational leadership because it's kind of idealized by a leader that empowers the people around them by knowing them well enough to really understand how they will thrive, and empowering them, inspiring them to be on a transformational journey themselves.
Requires being able to extend a lot of trust. And that can be hard.
Yeah, sometimes. Absolutely. And it requires a trust of oneself, and also an understanding that you are flawed. And for me, we're looking at on the converse, what makes a poor leader? A poor leader is somebody who's not learning themselves, believes the fallacy of their own thinking. Is sucked into the idea that they have somehow got a better thinking mechanism than the other people around them. They are somehow the only person who's connected to the truth. And that kind of leadership disempowers other people. And it's very easy to do. It's so easy to do with your kids. It's just so easy to do. You get convinced that for some reason, because your cards landed well, that you somehow are better than other people. And it's a deeply flawed.
Yeah.
It's not true. And it
sounds very arrogant,
Yeah.
when you say it out loud. Is an interesting law of the universe, which is as within, so without. And so I often find those who find it most challenging to trust are the least trustworthy themselves. So with that in mind, how can we reverse engineer that? How can someone get better at extending trust? Where must we start?
A leader has to start with accepting and understanding their own vulnerabilities, which conversely means they have to understand their strengths and embrace their strengths. A lot of the work I do with leadership teams is to appreciate this concept that we are all uniquely different. Our environment, our upbringing has caused us to have different qualities and strengths, our values, our upbringing, our education. So it's caused us, we've won in life because we've created lots and lots of shortcuts for doing things neurologically and emotionally. So understanding that we're good at some things and not so good at other things, being able to accept and embrace our weaknesses. And so the first thing that a leader can do to build trust is to allow other people into their weaknesses. Vulnerability-based trust, because the truth is, like, anybody that tells you, I don't have any insecurities, sorry, I did think. Anyone says, I don't have any insecurities, I don't have sleepless nights. I mean, I actually, weird enough, don't have any sleep very well, but I don't have insecurity. I've never done anything wrong. Anyone that tells you that, he's full of shit. You know it. Humans know that we are flawed individuals. Human knows that, whatever level you're at. You see, I know this particularly well. If I coach very senior leaders, spend time, and it amazes me. Like, so, I'm coaching a very enigmatic CEO on her presentation skills, and just not believing some of the stuff she told me about her insecurities in front of big groups of people, how she had masked them, for example. Now, her capacity to develop her leadership team was accelerated when she realized, yes, she was brilliant at loads of things, but there was stuff she was going to learn. And therefore, and the minute she accepted that she had some flaws, she would work on them, and she would share them with her team. She created an environment where everyone was able to do that. And if people aren't learning, then they're not growing. And if they're not growing, your team is stagnant in some way. And so the first step to that is kind of recognizing your own insecurities and vulnerabilities, weaknesses.
That's so interesting. Because, most people, they'll want, what's my quick fix? What can I physically do? And the hard work starts within first. Our outer world is often a reflection of our inner world, right? As within, so without. And I always know someone's got it right when the step 0 even is actually, have we turned within first, right? Because there's no cheat sheet you can give me for how to better trust others, even how to better trust myself so that I can better trust others. If I found leading others, selling to others, challenging, really challenging, the kind of work that you do, if I found it really challenging, what perspective would you recommend to me or push me to adopt? How should I change my paradigms?
Interesting. The first step of conscious leadership is to ask yourself in the moment, where are you? And when we talk about where are you in conscious, well, this idea is, where am I? And we talk about our line. And this idea of the line, above the line and below the line, is I played with for many years. The Conscious Leadership Group has a beautiful video on it and a beautiful set of resources on it. But it's something that comes back the partners in leadership also talk about it in their book, The Oz Principle. So when you ask yourself, where are you? When you say, if I'm finding something challenging, the likelihood is whenever we are challenged and we're feeling fear, we are below the line. We are like a victim of our lizard brain.
Okay.
And we've gone below the line. And in that feeling of we are under threat, we are under pressure. When I talk about this CEO, for example, there were certain circumstances she was an eloquent, most circumstances, 99.5% circumstances, she was an eloquent, brilliant communicator. There were some circumstances, by the way, ones that she never put herself into bright enough, thought she put herself in there, except in her head.
Yeah.
In those 0.5% circumstances, hundreds of people, many of her industry peers, the things she would need to do to get to the next level of leadership, in those circumstances, she went into fight or flight. Now, she didn't put herself in the situation, but she did, if I would say to her, well, I think, it'd be a good idea to speak to this trade body, she would go into that straight away and you could see it.
Interesting. How would it physically manifest?
It would physically manifest in a dilation of pupils, a flushing of skin, all these little micro.
Tensing. Yeah.
And when you said, if someone doesn't enjoy or is challenged, now there's nothing wrong with going below the line. It's a totally, utterly natural thing for humans to do. Humans go below the line into a fear that at the state we're below the line, we believe something is wrong. We lose our curiosity. We start looking for blame. We start looking, we feel like a victim. We're no longer at cause. And knowing, and that's why conscious leaders ask themselves all the time, where am I? And their teams. So how are we being? Are we acting and from fear? Are we acting from a sense of something's wrong?
Yeah.
Or are we curious, excited,
I love that.
at cause in the world, right? So it's a powerful sort of question to ask yourself, where am I? And we can do it all the time. Now, the thing is that when a leader says, I am feeling myself below the line, like we're a victim, like there's something wrong here, they're demonstrating a sense of vulnerability. How can we as a team get above the line on this issue? Maybe we need to spend the next 15 minutes below the line pointing who's to blame and finding out what went wrong. Because that's where below the line thinking can help. Judging, criticizing, we can get it all on the table. But at one point, we're going to need to get into action above the line and realize our own responsibility for what happened, and start thinking about solutions. And as soon as we get curious and we let go of that fear, in a position where we are more resources are available to us, because the resources that are given to us naturally when we're below the line are the resources required to fight saber-toothed tigers.
Yeah.
Right? They're not the resources required to have radiant new ideas.
I love this because it sounds a lot like what in some Eastern traditions is called, or we could refer to as being in survival mode versus creation mode. When you're
Exactly.
in survival mode, emotions, is are primarily lust, sadness, fear, anger, ego. You're kind of down here for those watching. You're kind of below the heart, and everything above the heart center and above is what we might call creation mode. So is it coming from the heart? Is it coming from passion? Is it coming from creativity? Is it coming from love? And you notice you notice the shift in someone's energy when they're doing something because they feel like they have to, or they're afraid of losing something, versus if they're excited and energetic and creative. And you mentioned conscious leadership. What is consciousness in this frame, in this perspective, in this context we're talking about?
I mean, I think we're talking about kind of aware leaders, awareness, rather than super consciousness as it were. We're talking about being conscious and aware of how you are at cause to what's going on in your life and what's going on in others' lives, and how willing you are to share that with other people to empower them to also be conscious of where they are and how they're being and how they're impacting the situation.
There's a strong sense of self-reflection, self-introspection that it sounds like is really required for someone to lead at not the highest level, but maybe just the most effective level, or to be effective at all.
But yeah, I mean, we are talking about leadership. So I started my career as a salesperson, as a sales trainer, and I still train salespeople. I largely train and coach and mentor sales leaders or commercial leaders, but it's exactly the same thing. As a salesperson, as an individual contributor, if you are not aware of how you are coming across and how you are experiencing your own emotions, if you're not experiencing your emotions, what you experience is you're misguided in believing that your emotions are coming from your circumstances. When you're in that great illusion of like, what's happening to me is somebody else's fault or society's fault. When you're in that illusion, it's very difficult to produce. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a value judgment. It's just, you don't really get results because, as you said, you're in survival mode, and in survival mode, you've got less options available. You're not actually connected to all of those resources that you could be connected to, would be able to produce results. So, as a salesperson, if you knock on somebody's door, or you pick the phone up, or you write an email and there's fear in your heart, then it's highly likely not only the person will feel that fear, but you will have less ability to hear what's really going on for them, to connect with them at a deeper level, to understand them, to serve them in some positive way. And it's exactly the same with leaders. Like, leaders can't expect to connect with their teams while they're in fight or flight mode.
Like, it's such an easy question to build the habit to ask yourselves, where am I in relation to the line? And the line is essentially, if I'm below the line, am I in survival mode? If I'm above the line, am I in creation mode? So really, that's a really easy, practical takeaway. I love it. I might write more about that.
I remember, I don't know whatever happened to it, but I remember being sold at one point in, I think, the 1990s, like a little pager, like, it's kind of relevant, pager-like device that was being developed by a guy called Michael Breed, who was one of the kind of masters of neurolinguistics at the time. And it was basically just a little buzzer that would buzz you every now and then. And it just buzzed. And the idea was, when it buzzed, you would then sort of just check into your physiology. You're like, I mean, where's my breathing? What's my heart? What's the heart rate of the people around? It wasn't reading it. It wasn't doing anything more than just like reminding you to be conscious of like in this case, what your physiology was. And therefore, because, you know, in neurolinguistic programming, we understand that our physiology kind of drives our emotions, or emotions drive our physiology. It's like a virtuous circle. And I was having a beautiful chat. I told you that that I took my daughter into school today, and there was two of her friends in the car, and we were talking about music, and we were playing music in the car, and her friend was talking about just the impact of lyrics and music on your ability to learn at school. And you know, and we were and they were questioning, like, why would anyone listen to kind of negative songs and while they were at school? And you might, because you want to connect to your difficult emotional states. And I'm not criticizing anyone who likes to listen to different kinds of music. But they were
Really
like,
emotional in the
yeah, sort of like, and also, you know, kind of music with lyrics that might be disparaging to others. So that might create division and might create a sense of superiority. There's so much in music that music can do. But it's the kind of same question. You know, it's like, what inputs are we having around us, and what environment are we creating? And in coming here, for example, in the media eye moving here to a beautiful space in Camden, the idea is post-COVID, how do we create an environment that people want to come to? Like, we don't want to mandate people back to work, but how can we create an environment? How can we be in an environment that is a positive place for people to thrive? And the more we understand how teams interact and how people work with each other, and the more we give people an opportunity to support and grow through their work, the better results we get as a business.
Let's come back a little bit to this interplay between your work in sales and your work in leadership. I have a theory. It probably isn't much of a theory, but I'll call it a theory for now, that we can every one of us, be a leader, depending on what your definition of being a leader is. Now, let's just run with that thought for a second. If everyone can be a leader, or has an inner leader that we can be more of, and everyone is a salesperson, then there's an inextricable link between sales and leadership. But I'm not sure exactly what that link is. What do you think it is? What's your perspective?
Everyone is a salesperson. As a premise, everyone is a salesperson. Everyone has the potential to sell ideas, services, and even things to people. And the extent to which you're successful in whatever endeavor you make is generally your capacity to get other people to do it with you. Whether it get customers to buy into your idea, get staff to buy into your idea, get your team to buy into your idea. Football managers fail when they fail to get their teams to buy into their philosophy, their style, playmaking. They tell them what to do. You know, they share their philosophy. To the extent to which they can share that philosophy in a way that truly changes their behavior is the extent they're successful. My osteopath, and I talk about this in the book, my osteopath, she can have a huge amount of understanding of my body. She can manipulate my body brilliantly. She's not able to change my behavior around how I sit, what exercise I do, even to a certain extent what diet I do. The amount of times I go to visit her. If she can't change that, then she doesn't have a long-term impact on my health outcomes. So that's the link between sales and leadership. The skills to be a great salesperson are the skills to get results. And they are therefore exactly the same skills. And this is what's fascinating. You know, sometimes it scares me that the exercises that I'm doing are similar exercises to the ones that I was learning when I was originally learning to be a better salesperson. And what I find even more fascinating is, like a life learner. I love going on courses. I love buying stuff. I love reading books. I love going particularly on live programs. And sometimes I go into a live program and somebody like does an exercise. I think I've done that a million times before. Or I could do a better version of that. And then I get into the practice and I get new insight. I get new understanding. I can listen at a deeper level, how I can be more curious, how I can question. So these, and so sometimes the truth is, people that have afford doing these exercises because they're such simple stuff. I'm teaching people how to listen. And now the reality is that the reason CEOs and senior leadership team trust me is because I've been doing it for 30 years. And therefore, I can give them a basic, simple questioning and listening exercise, and they can think it's part of a transformational leadership program. And it's exactly the same stuff. It's really the same stuff that I would also deliver to a 25-year-old who wants to learn how to pick up the phone and be more effective. They are the same skills: questioning, listening, deeper understanding, empathy, and then moving to being able to understand and translate that into an ask.
Okay, so let's break this down really practically. What are the skills that we need to build? And if you need to or want to take me through some processes to test this out, let's do it.
So the fundamental skill we need to understand is ourselves. And the only way to understand it, the only way to understand is, as you said, to look within. So the capacity to be with yourself, and nowadays there are millions of ways of doing that, but the ability to be with yourself and really understand your own processes, how you are operating and how your past and your present and your environment is impacting you is critical. My recommendation for doing that is to do some kind of a physical and breathing exercise. So whether that's yoga or meditation or Tai Chi or Pilates, that would be up to the individuals to kind of work out. But alongside that, at a very practical level, almost all of our programs start with some kind of innovative psychological assessment to give you an understanding of what choices or what preferences you develop in your life that are different to others. And so if you don't know whether you are naturally using more introversion or naturally using more extroversion, and how to measure how other people use introversion and extroversion. And I'm not going to say whether you are an introvert or an extrovert. Very few people are just introverts or just extroverts. You are all ambiverts.
Yes. Yeah.
But with that distinction, to this day, I still know that almost any leadership team I'm with, the discussion of that distinction will cause a transformation in the way they lead, because they will get some insight into people in their teams' difference around that scale, for example. Now, psychologists have worked out that there are 5, it's called the big 5 in psychology. There are 5 traits you can pretty much objectively measure, and pretty much every piece of psychological research can kind of be broken back down into those 5 ideas. So understanding that for me, is a prerequisite to understanding teams around you. Now, a lot of people are skeptical about psychometrics, and I totally understand why, because a lot of them are nonsense.
Yep.
You have to understand that they are nonsense. They are, that they are kind of, they are flawed fundamentally.
It can be a useful tool without being the absolute.
Yeah. It's not the truth. Say it's a self-revolve. And the Lumina Learning, who I work a lot with, and we don't even call the tools that we use, profiles. We don't call it a psychological profile, call it a portrait. It's a Lumina Spark portrait, not a Lumina Spark profile. Why? Because I drew it. You reported this. It's a portrait you draw of yourself. It helps spark a conversation about how you relate to your teams, how you relate to yourself. So without an understanding of your own basic psychology, you'll find it difficult to understand other people. And funny enough, on the way over, I was listening to the BBC program about the first reality TV show based in the Outer Hebrides that Ben Fogle was discovered on. I can't remember. It wasn't called Survivor. It was about a big group of people living on an island. The reason I was thinking about that is because the truth is that you could discover someone else's psychology and your own psychology if you just spent a lot of time on your own or with that other person. So you don't need a psychometric assessment tool to tell you about yourself or tell you about someone else.
You spend the most time with yourself.
Yeah. However, we do spend the most of it, but we don't spend enough time actually doing that reflection, and we don't spend enough time with the people around us. If I put you in a room with somebody, days and days and days, or months and months, you work them out. But in the modern world, we just simply interact with too many people to be able to do that without some kind of a framework to help us accelerate our understanding of each other. So I know that people that will work together sometimes takes 8 months, 10 months. Still, if I said to you, okay, here are the aspects of personality. So you work with this guy for 8 months. Tell me what you think. They go, 1 or 2 they might be able to guess, but others they just won't be able to guess because they haven't spent enough time. We naturally would learn that from each other. Yeah, that's what humans would do. But we're not in a very natural environment. This built environment is not natural.
Yeah.
So giving yourself a tool to help to understand others and also a language. So if a team doesn't have a language to understand difference, or we talked about the conscious leadership, so we talked about where am I and the lie. The language to understand our own personal state or our own personal emotional state. So a language to understand our own psychology and others' psychology that's non-judgmental. So the challenge with, the kind of the old-fashioned versions of psychometrics is they were labels that people used as badges. Says that I'm ENTJ. You're introverted. I'm extroverted. Shouldn't go right. So without judgmental labels, you can have a language to communicate with each other. How can we apply more outcome focus to this? How can we be more big picture thinking here? How can we bring some more blue energy to the table to deal with this problem? Having that language in a team enables you to celebrate difference, welcome diversity, and collaborate more effectively.
It feels like it's not just for the team, it's also for yourself, right? It's something you were talking about there has reminded me of a thought I've had a lot, which is we're around ourselves a lot, but are we present with ourselves very much? We can apply the same thing to others. You can be around a team or team members, colleagues for years, but not be present with each other, not really ask questions. It's so easy to do now because we can access the whole world on these devices. And as a result, we are accessing almost none of the world. Yeah. It's choice over well.
Yeah.
What language or where would you recommend people get started with building the language as a tool to use to better understand themselves?
So, I guess that I use Lumina Learning suite of products, right? And because I use it commercially and it's a kind of a premium level, but you can go on the App Store and download Lumina Splash and do like a free version of it. And suddenly you've got a portrait of yourself. You've created a portrait of yourself. You can create a portrait of somebody else. So that's a very, very practical tool. The Lumina Splash app is a practical tool. And higher level, once if you can convince your boss to invest in it for everybody, then you can be scanning each other's flashes and reflecting in that kind of way.
Interesting.
The interesting bit though is that, when I went to see the Dalai Lama, and it wasn't a one-to-one kind of conversation we had, by the way, but
I'm very lucky if you had. It's been really cool.
the first thing he said to me was, and it was really interesting. Literally, the first thing he said, speaking in England, the first thing he said was, it's really easy to be drawn in by somebody else's tradition in each of your own cultural backgrounds is a body of work that you can look to that will help you to understand yourself better. And so, it might be more accessible. For some people, it might not be more accessible. That, the trauma of their childhood might mean that actually their own cultural heritage doesn't appeal to them for whatever reason. Right? But and why am I saying this? I guess because I would say go and find a system of understanding the human condition.
Yes.
That suits you right now.
Yeah.
And I know, because I know that whether it might be from me at the moment chanting, whether it might be in the future a deeper understanding of the Jewish mystical tradition, whether it might be a deeper understanding of the American native traditions, for example, they will all have something to teach us.
Yes.
They are all pointing in the same place because there's only one source of wisdom. But I would say find whatever appeal, find it, and find a teacher, find somebody who you can look to guide you in whatever direction you need to learn.
And if I could add to that, I might add on to the end a little bit about having an awareness or an acceptance that it might change and evolve over time. At a different stage of your life, the same framework might not work anymore. But I love this so much because I don't know if it's because maybe it is because we live in this kind of homogenous Western society now, or it feels like we do, even though we don't, but it can feel like we do, that we've lost a sense of cultural intelligence. But each culture, with its links and its traditions and its sources of wisdom, have unique things to teach you that might work for you. And the great thing about living in the modern time, I can go access cultures that weren't the ones I was born into that might better speak to me. I wasn't born into a Buddhist household or a Native American family, but those might be traditions that really speak to me. And I have the ability to go, to some extent, learn from those now, where even a few decades ago, I wouldn't know.
At different times in our lives, we'll seek different teachers to teach us the things that we need to learn. And if we're not seeking, we're either growing or you're staying still, or you're going backward. And my sense is, if you're not growing, you're going backwards. That's for me. If I'm not growing, if I'm not learning, if I haven't got a few books on the go, for me, if I haven't got some kind of retreat or some kind of learning experience I'm looking forward to, then I feel like I'm not growing. I put myself in a position where, because I teach, I feel like I have to be learning new stuff all the time. But I think that, I'm super skeptical. I used to run a big training company at one part of my life. And in that role, recruit and keep the standards of quite a large body of trainers. And so we'd constantly, every 6 months, we'd have one of these sessions where we'd bring new trainers in, and we'd check their skills and we'd check their background and their history. And then one of the questions I'd ask them is like, what was the last piece of learning you did? And to me, that was, I could have ignored all the other screening we did. But for me, one of the things is that that tells you whether somebody's going to be a valuable member of your team is what's their attitude to learning, and how self-directed is that learning? If it's learning that was delivered by their company, or just, or delivered in the last educational institution, I don't really get that excited by it. But if it's a book they read, or a podcast they're following, or just an idea that they're developing, or a challenge they're setting themselves that's helping them to teach something, then to me, that always indicates somebody who is they're gonna add value to me, because they're gonna be learning stuff they might teach me. And that kind of learning organization, I guess, is what, to me, I'm attracted to.
A wise man once said to me, stagnation is death. And that saying, it, I think, is a reflection of observing nature, right? Anything in nature that stagnates tends to die off. A pool of stagnant water becomes toxic and poisonous, but flowing cool water is generally safe to drink out in nature if it's not touched by us. But anyway, and we are part of nature, so we reflect that.
Yeah, that's
It's really interesting. So all of this is a big step one, right? So if the question is, how does one become better at building the skills? What's the process for building the skills, or what skills we should build to become better at sales and therefore better at leadership? All of this turning within is a big step one with a number of pieces to it. So what's step two?
So step two is once you understand yourself, is to understand others. One can't understand others until one's quiet oneself, until one's understood, and particularly one's quiet. One's learned to calm one's own internal voice and internal system down, so you are free of that feeling of fear. And once you're free of that feeling and you're able to connect with another human being, and the skills, interestingly, the skills come. I mean, the skills are questioning and listening. That's like the fundamental skill of leadership and sales is questioning and listening. The truth is that happens naturally once you're slow. That's natural. Once you're kind of safe in your own skin, you are naturally above the line. When you are above the line, you are open, you are curious, and you are excited to hear other people's perspectives. But the skills that we teach salespeople are how to ask good questions, how to summarize well, how to really care enough, structure that questioning in a way that helps the other person's thinking, how to, but there's a kind of a step before that, I suppose. And it's attitudinal. It's caring more about the other than you. So great salespeople really care about service. Now, to a certain extent, this is like a moral thing, or this is like an idea that I just choose to live with, rather than having a huge amount of evidence around it. Because the truth is, there are deeply selfish, people who lack understanding of themselves, who have created value for themselves in this society. Because our society is so fundamentally flawed in the way they operate, then you can succeed materially in this world without caring about others. I'm saying that I see evidence of that.
Yeah.
I don't see evidence of satisfaction in those people. I don't see evidence of really producing much more than more anxiety and fear. You can operate below the line, create a whole load of anxiety and fear, and you're a billionaire and sleeping in his office because you're because you think that that's gonna, and you're encouraging other people to sleep in the office because you've got limitless resources. You could literally fly to Mars and back with the resources you've got, and you're still tweeting in the middle of the night to try and influence people because you don't really have natural followership. You end up, kind of buying your likes and buying your capacity to influence.
it's the story of the millionaire in the empty mansion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard a few stories like this from a number of different writers or influencers. They go into these spaces and all they want is to make money, and they look at these and they go, actually, is this what I want? Because you go in somewhere, there's a butler who opens the door for you. There's a number of servants around, and all of that service and all of this big mansion is to serve one guy who goes, I don't have any family. I don't have any friends. Their hobbies sound rather pathetic, for lack of a better word, to people like us, because they no longer have a sense of, I guess, the real world. But the real world for us is connection, right? It's you lose that sense of connection when your whole life becomes about this external material world. And what I've noticed about this, what this I think create is a glass ceiling for how successful, in air quotes, one can be. So I'll give you an example. From personal experience, what I've observed in others is that sometimes out of fear or out of survival, one can push themselves, make a lot of money, and then they get to a point where they realize the money didn't make them happy. And now they go, okay, I need to use all this money to figure out how to make myself happy. And sometimes it's the wrong answer. Sometimes they might figure some things out, if it's therapy or who knows, whatever. But for some people, like myself, and I'm the primary example of this, my glass ceiling for my ability to create material success without first working on myself is very low. I can't push forward to create a lot of wealth and money without having worked on myself first. And then having gone and done that, I then noticed more impact started to come, and I'm on that journey now. And different people will have a different glass ceiling, just depending on themselves, the unique, human that they are, will have a different glass ceiling. And I think it creates this interesting assumption online, especially, that you don't have to work on yourself. You don't have to care about others. Like you said, you don't have to want to be of service, because if you just work hard enough, you can still make the money. And what I've noticed is actually, as a result of this kind of theory that I've got, that's a total fallacy. It will work for a few people, and even then they won't be successful, again, in air quotes, depending on what your definition of success is. But for many of us, it won't work without those things, because we have a glass ceiling capping our material wealth or material success at whatever our level of internal, emotional, or mental success is.
So that there's a concept in the field of Kabbalah, which is the Jewish mystical tradition. The desire to receive for oneself alone, is very different from the desire to receive in order to help others. And so I think one of the most influential interviews I ever watched, I can't remember who he was. He was a Sikh businessman. He was an entrepreneur in the north in food. And he said that in his community, how much tax he paid was something to be proud of.
Yes.
How much giving back to society. Now, my grandfather probably wasn't very good at paying tax, but my grandfather, who was an entrepreneur, was very good at giving money away. And even once he'd been bankrupt a few times, he was still giving money away. And his brother used to have to help him out with how much money he would give away. But in the Jewish tradition, this idea of giving being like a central tenet of who you are as a business person, why you do business, because you want to be able to serve your community. And I was looking at, I was paying my father's synagogue bill and it's not really a bill. In our synagogue, we're a very small community, and it's a voluntary contribution, and it's a sliding scale. And then it suggested for those people, I think, that earn more than £1 million, or maybe it was a bit less than that, it suggested a percentage of your net salary. And that's kind of a beautiful idea that actually, and that's what, for me, that's what taxes are. Like, I should clearly be paying much more percentage of my salary than someone who's struggling. That seems totally logical to me. Now, so, so I kind of know, like at a very deep level, this Kabbalistic idea that when you are in service of others, energy comes to you that is limitless. There is, we all have a capacity to connect with this unkind of understandable source of energy and wisdom. The Kabbalist suggests that when your desire is to help others, you are far more able. Well, the universe wants to help you, and like and there's loads of other traditions that say exactly the same thing. It is at the heart of most religions, but not just most religions, most cultures. Like in the Jewish system, like we always think like this idea of like like the Jewish mother, my wife, all of the matriarchs in our world, like wanting to feed everybody, like wanting to feed everyone, and then you realize that a tradition in the world where a mother doesn't want to feed their kids and feed everybody. I mean, there might be slightly more individualistic societies where they don't want all the kids to come around, but I haven't really experienced many of them. Like all my, I mean, there are probably some broken cultures and broken societies where people don't want to feed their neighbors, but I think in so many places I go, that desire to feed others, to support others, so strong because it's natural, just where we come from. And, coming back to that, to me, that step, know yourself, work on yourself, understand yourself, seek to understand others, but seek to understand others because you want to serve them and you want to serve your community. What I understood about really why I'm on the planet, why I'm here, is to inspire others, like to empower others to support themselves, their communities, their businesses, to do more, to get more out of themselves, to get more out of their business, to get more out of their community. And so you kind of realize that that the people that have inspired me and the people that have delivered for themselves, in my experience, high value, are usually delivering high value to other people. One of my best friends, I get so inspired by the fact that he never has a minute to spare, but generally because he's working and helping lots of other people, and he's ridiculously successful in business. But he's also a chairman of a major charity. Sure. So, but that means, he's working from 7 till 10 every day, or 6 days a week, because it doesn't work on the Sabbath. And my grandpa was like that. My grandpa would work 6 and sometimes a half days a week, and all of the time was thinking about service to others and how the business could support schools, hospitals.
Earlier, you alluded to having the ability to slow down. And people, naturally, understandably, we live in a busy world, busy society. We have a bunch of different demands. Really practically, how would you recommend someone slows down? What's the simplest thing I can do to help myself slow down in a way that will really affect my neurology, my psychology?
So one of the things I do occasionally, and I love doing, I'm like how wizard we call ourselves in the Street Wisdom organization. The Street Wisdom is a not-for-profit that I'm part of. And anyone could be a wizard, anyone could train to be a wizard. And it's a very, very simple process developed by another one of these guys, David Pearl, and lots of other people. So I just David kind of heads the organization. who's another one of those people that's constantly serving others. And by doing that, creates a huge amount of value for himself and others. And he's created a process called Street Wisdom, where there are 4 instructions. So this try it in Soho at 11 o'clock. This probably won't go out in time that you could promote that. But so we'll meet in Soho. A group of random strangers will meet me, and I will give them 4 instructions. I'm going to give you the instructions. Because anyone can, and by the way, you can go to streetwisdom.org and you can download these instructions and run one for yourself. And there's even a podcast for it. We will take you through this. But there are 4 instructions we give. The idea of street wisdom is to tap into the wisdom of the streets, to get answers from the environment. Yes. You're not really getting answers from the environment. You're getting answers from the universe, really, or your own deep subconscious, or what you might already know if you could slow down. So the first instruction we give, if I get ready, because normally I'd get the instructions out, but I think the first instruction we give is look around you, be drawn to what attracts you, notice what doesn't. So we said be drawn to what attracts you, notice what doesn't. And people would spend, depending on how long the wander is, might spend 10 minutes or maybe 5 minutes walking. And like, so in this situation, be drawn to what attracts you. This beautiful brickwork. Notice what doesn't. That shit. So you become the dome. So notice what attracts you, the kind of industries of that web. Notice what doesn't, the metal. So, so tune into your environment is the first instruction, really. But in terms of attraction and what doesn't, then the next thing, and the instruction is, and you're asking me, how do you slow right down? But the instruction is, then the second instruction we give is slow right. We say slow right down. So slow everything, slow your movement, slow your thinking. One of the beautiful instructions David wants, slow down the growth in your hair. Right, just right, and then people say, well, should I do the other thing? You want to, but slow right down. And recently, I was to the group scene in it was so funny. So we were doing it in the grounds of Roehampton University. We were doing a leadership retreat there, and I had all this like global leadership team when they were walking around. When they were on this slow right down path, it looks like I'd given them all acid. Like there was a group of middle-aged leaders, men and women. That's the second part. The third one is see the beauty in everything. An instruction. So we give these in groups of 10 minutes and see the beauty in everything. And that's such an important instruction in life. But bearing in mind it's come, and it's a clever process. You've noticed what attracts you, you've slowed right down, you're then going into noticing what attracts you. We used to give an instruction which, when we sometimes do a longer, which is see. Effectively, what you're now doing, if you have now become acutely aware of everything in your environment and you've slowed yourself right down. Then actually what we do in the Street Wisdom Walk is we've already primed you to have a question to ask, and then we send you up for 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, sometimes 30 minutes, to walk the streets, that question in mind. Can I be more effective as a leader? Or can I launch that product? It could be a really specific question. And the streets will give you answers. But actually what happens, because you're slowed down, because you're super above the line, because you're really tuned in to the messages, little things like a street sign or particular pattern on a wall will inspire an answer from you within or from the great consciousness. So that's a beautiful process, Simon. It's a beautiful process to but I love the book. There's a book called Into the Magician's Shop. I can't remember who it's written by. It's written by the neurologist who also is the dean of a faculty in, I'd call it emotional intelligence, but effectively he's a lifelong meditator who learned meditation from someone in a magic shop. He's now a kind of brain surgeon, but also a dean of this faculty. And he says he talks to students and he asks them, simple question. He says, like, if I could give you a pill that you took every day, that would reduce your heartbeat, would reduce stress, would increase your ability to make love, would, give you greater connection, give you a longer life, would you take it? Everyone puts that. And then he says to them, right, if to taking that pill, you'd have to sit still, you'd sit still for 20 minutes, would you still take it? People said yes. And he says, that's meditation. And the science around meditation is really powerful. I'm really super excited because my wife is one of those things I can't meditate. Is in a retreat at the moment learning some body work in Spain, and she sent me a message today to say, in the meditation this happened, and they were doing a humming meditation. One beautiful thing about all the apps that there are now is that there are so many ways of meditation. Like you can go to a retreat in India and learn a silent meditation. They were doing a humming meditation. I did a brilliant workshop recently with someone called a drone orchestra, which is about humming, right? And they were talking about the power of humming. And humming is a really, really powerful tool to create resonance. So you can humming meditate, you can singing meditate, you can meditate to tapes that you find online. But if you want to learn to slow down, then you should, and I say should, we have to, but my recommendation would be put aside 15 or 20 minutes every day just to be with yourself and see what happens. And if you don't want to invest that time, if you really convince and 20 minutes more on TikTok is going to develop you, that's your choice. I get that. And we get choices what we do with our time. You might want to cook more, you want to exercise more. It's totally understandable. But I just found for myself that time is something I don't like to give up. Weird enough, I did give it up. I just ended up thinking I really should fill in Seven's form before I meet him.
Oh, no.
I should think a little bit about his questions, and I want to make breakfast for people. So weird enough, I didn't meditate this week. So it's like I do it but most days, my practice is to go before I go and communicate with anybody, before I turn my phone on, is to go do a little bit of kind of stretching and a couple of poses, and then sit. And the reason that I just realized that when I talk to people I really respect, that's what a lot of them do. In different ways, some of them do it because they walk their dog without their phone, or and you could do that. Like if that's walk your phone without walk,
Whatever works for you in this stage of your life now. So if one wants to be a better leader, we've got this big step 1 of turning within, this big step 2 of almost turning without, caring about others, wanting to be a service. I'm wondering now, is there a step 3? Is there a step 4 and beyond?
Well, step 3 and 4 will come because once you're tuned in, you'll get the answers. Right? Once you're tuned in, you'll know what to do next. Once you care about others, you'll know what to do next. 3 in the sales process is to ask for what you want and be okay with people saying no. Give people the space to say yes with joy and no with joy. And if people who are scared of asking people to say yes or no are scared of it because they feel there's going to be a value judgment attached to people saying yes or no. A value judgment on whether they're good, a good leader, whether a good person, whether a good salesperson, etc., etc. When you have a conversation with someone who can inspire you into an idea, enroll you into an idea, and then give you free choice about whether you say yes or no, then you'll probably show that conversation again. I'm happy to engage it. Nothing is being damaged. Like people think, well, if they say no, it will damage it. No, it won't. It won't damage your relationship. Your relationship's based on integrity. Your relationship based on care. Like you should be saying, if you think no, that's great. It's great that it's a no, people. People think, and I might have said earlier, I'm fascinated by how do you get people to say yes, but actually I've realized salesperson's job is to try and find no's as quickly as possible, like, and not no's and like push them out of the way, but to work out who the people they should have in the team and who they shouldn't have in the team. Who are we going to work for? Who's this product going to work for? I've made lots of mistakes in my life, particularly, in what clients you pick up, and not listen to my gut, etc. And what happens when you take on clients that you can't serve is that you don't really serve them that well. And then you've got to do the work all over again to get another client to replace them.
I was going to ask for people who are interested, clarify what the sales process is, but it almost feels like we've kind of done that accidentally throughout the conversation.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would add that we haven't covered that you feel people really need to understand sales, which I love because now I've got this understanding that it also helps us understand how to be a better leader. So is there anything here that we haven't covered that would be really useful for us to understand about the process?
I mean, about the process, or the process. Most of it is done a lot of it's done in the preparation. So, and it's done in the preparation, it's done in the questioning, it's done in the caring and all of that. It's then done in the being okay to ask and close. It's also done in the understanding that someone else has their own process to buy, and their process to buy should match your process to sell. So they have a process to buy, and that process will normally, for most people, depending on how they practice, will involve thinking of why to say no, thinking of what might be wrong, being skeptical. If you are connected and you've really understood them, the objections are less likely to arise. But actually, being able to embrace and let people explore why they might say no, why it might not work for them, being open to it. Now, it can also, all of these techniques can err on the side of manipulation. It should be manipulative to say to somebody, oh, maybe this isn't for you. Oh no, I'll take it away from you. I was taught that. I learned to sell photocopy in my 20s. Well, I was like, I think 20. I was selling photocopiers. And I was taught the art of manipulation. And what you realize is the art of manipulation is not much different than the art of persuasion and influence. The only difference is manipulation is when your intent is not positive to the other person. So if I've got a positive intent to for example, influence my daughter to try different food, and I might choose to say, there's a limited amount of this, so I'm only going to give you a very small piece to try. Why? Because I understand that there's a basic human understanding that things that are scarce are more valuable. It will taste nicer if she believes there's not a lot of it. If I put loads of it on the plate and say, have a bit of that, now, am I manipulating her? Well, it depends what's my intent.
Yeah. Okay.
If my intent is to positively influence her to have a wider sense of food choices, then I'm using a technique, an understanding of the psychology of influence. So understanding what somebody's objection, there are 2 points there, but understanding there is a part of the sales process which is being open to dealing with objections. Because that is a natural part of how many of us buy, is to raise objections. So we teach that, we train that, and we like people to be open to it, I guess.
I'm very aware that because we've been comparing and contrasting the sales and being a salesperson with leadership and being a leader, that there will be some people who are a little bit turned off by that because, as you recognize in your writing and we talked about before, sales for many people is an icky process, right? It turns people off. It grosses people out a little bit. And, because there are enough people whose intentions are more to manipulate as opposed be of service. And that slight difference in intention completely changes feeling of the result as well as the result itself,
Yeah.
or it can. What would you say to someone who feels like sales or being a salesperson is icky and kind of turns them off and they don't want to do it? How would you work with someone through those feelings?
I mean, so I had this beautiful interaction with someone in the street yesterday. I kind of regret not getting, I know his name is David, but that's what, it's outside the pub. I wasn't just literally on the street. And he gave me some really, really good advice about comedy and being really deceptive. And I was asking him why he wasn't doing comedy anymore. And he was talking about his career as a salesperson. He ended up talking about his career as a salesperson. He had a very different experience of sales than me. And he had largely, he lived his life in call centers, selling products that he didn't believe in. In order to sell products you don't believe in, you have to manipulate. It becomes a numbers game, and you don't have positive intent for the other person, and therefore, your experience of it and people's experience of it who have been sold to you is negative. We've all experienced that. Right? We've experienced that lots of times. And so the challenge with the techniques in my book and the things that I train is that if you're working in an organization or you've set up a business where your product doesn't add value to people, then these techniques won't work. It's connected. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't want to care. If your product doesn't deliver value, you don't need to connect deeply at a level with somebody. In fact, that's going to probably stop you selling to them. You don't want to, you connect really deep with them. You're going to, no, you don't want to buy this is shit. Right? And what I say to people is, if you don't believe in your product, you don't believe in your company, get out. Get out. Like that, whether your product delivers value is objective anyway. It's subjective anyway. It's not true. We can't actually tell whether it's going to deliver value. So you don't believe in it, get out of the company, go and do something else. If you set up a business and you think you can't help people, your product's not going to be better than your competitors, forget about it. Stop doing it. Do something where you think you're going to add value. Now, I do understand. I'm trapped now in this, and my circumstances mean that, and I have to have like some sense of understanding of that, but I don't think you're going to get fulfillment from that, and I don't think you're likely to enjoy it. And the only way you would be able to enjoy it would be to mask your natural desire to support and help other people, and you could mask that by alcohol, you could mask that by depressing all your emotions. And that's why they talk about great salespeople having thick skin. No, salespeople don't have thick skin. Great manipulators have thick skin. Right. Great salespeople have got really, really porous skin because what they're able to do is connect deeply to other people. Now, don't confuse that with great salespeople attached to the other person saying yes, partly because they care about them, but partly because they realize that there's millions of people out there that could buy my product. There's millions of companies I could work with. Someone connects after this or connects to LinkedIn, so I want to talk to you about a training program, and we don't connect. And it turns out that I don't really have the expertise they're looking for, or they want to deliver it in a way that isn't going to support me. Then them saying no, I want to see that as a blessing.
Yeah.
That's not going to waste their time or waste my time. And the quicker I can work that out, the better I am. So I want to get a no as quickly as possible, if possible.
If the within is a manipulative intention, you're always going to have that result. But, in the same way, the beautiful thing is we have the freedom of choice to reframe our perspective about what we're doing. And by doing the noticing that you mentioned earlier, you can spend some time with yourself to go, do I really believe in this, right? If you're an entrepreneur or you're a politician and it's You feel like you need to have this thick skin to go out and sell your thing, and it feels icky. And as a result, is getting in the way of your ability to achieve the result, all of which would be reflected in leadership too. Then you set yourself up for failure with that. Well, if you don't do that, you set yourself up for failure. If you have that reflection, spend that time within, you can ask yourself, is this right for me? And if it is, all it takes is a little reframe on, well, actually, I really believe in this. So what's the problem with selling it? Well, the problem is if I have to manipulate, but I don't. Such a powerful perspective.
You don't have to manipulate if you can allow yourself time to find the right customers to feed. And that's why the research bit's so important. So if you are selling to people who are likely to say no, but not going to help them, then it's a big numbers game. Like if you're only really having conversations with people that you've predetermined are the right people because they have the right conditions to buy your product or service. So, I do work with some very large companies, but I know where my sweet spot is. I understand where my sweet spot is. I built sometime a very large training business so we could sell to very large companies. I found myself lacking fulfillment in that environment. I found I didn't enjoy the process of selling those and more delivering those large training programs. And so now I'm likely to say to somebody who says to me, if someone says to me, I've got a contact I won't name a company, that there are companies where I would say, well, that's just not for me. Sure. It's not for me. I know somebody, and interestingly, like I work as an associate with some companies. There were times when I can enjoy delivering in these, I can enjoy interacting, but I know what is my best use of time.
And as with sales, so with leadership, if we take the most simple definition of a leader as being someone who is bringing together other people to achieve a result, then all the same things that get in your way of selling something or enrolling someone into something are all the same things that would get in your way of showing up as that leader. Getting out of your own way is sometimes the most powerful thing you can do. And it can be as simple as a little reframe. This is really interesting.
Being really authentic to yourself. So the chairman of the media, the wonderful, called Nick Carswell, call him Uncle Nick. Uncle Nick, he's the H in PhD, which is a big media organization. And first time I met him, just told me this story about leadership, which has always followed me. And he just told me, and again, that it greatly, like a person's achieved a huge amount in his life. The first time I connect with him, he tells me about one of the mistakes he made. Like, that's just an example of like vulnerability-based leadership, right? And he took that mistake in not getting rid of somebody quickly, painlessly, and in a way that wouldn't impact the whole organization. How his desire to be liked and desire not to make a mistake stopped him from effectively saying no to this person earlier. He knew in his heart of heart he would need to say no. He didn't say no early enough. And so it's a beautiful story. And having made this really difficult decision, he tells this great story of like being in the pub. They had their own bar, and having made this difficult decision, having also this difficult thought of I'm going to go and I've got to face up to the fact that I've let this person go. Having people come to, why didn't you do it earlier? And so being decisive about what you know to be right in your business, about product development, about people, clearly like seeking data to support your gut feel. So I'm not saying, everybody you dislike, you should just go and fire them. For what I am saying is that, that people in organizations who don't fit aren't happy. Happy people don't produce happy people around them. One of the things we talked about this line, when you live in an organization where a lot of people are below the line, they drag people around with them. Drag people down. We talk about this concept of eagles and ducks are on the floor quacking below the line and infecting everyone else with that spirit. So bold leaders understand and are prepared to make choices that liberate the people around them by making sure that they've only got in their teams people who are on board and believe in their product and their service and what they're doing. And not, right or wrong whether the product's good or whether the product fits for the target audience that's it's a subjective decision that one needs to make if one wants to sell a product or if one wants to be in a leadership team, because all leadership teams are delivering a product, but they're creating a product, product or a service. And sometimes people don't believe in the strategy. Some people think, no, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. If the person doesn't know how to get on board and doesn't believe in it, they shouldn't be in that leadership team. If you play for Tottenham, you need to believe in Angeball. If you don't believe in Angeball, get out. And that's why great footballers shouldn't play for Tottenham. I'm not saying
Yeah. Gavin, we started this conversation understanding a little bit more about your childhood, how your youth, how your story affected you. What would your advice now, the stage you are at your life now, be to your younger self if you could have a conversation?
Buy that house in Camden.
Where returns will be fantastic.
I mean, I've that why I was house in play didn't buy. That would be one. I guess there must be people along the way that I forgot. And there must be contacts before LinkedIn and before my address book got digitalized that I no longer have. I think what I've learned is that every single person you meet potentially can be support to your career and to your developer. And if you reach out a lot, then every time you do a new project, you're doing stuff you don't know and you need people to help you. And so it would be to have a really good address book, like to have a lot of storage in your Google Drive to keep people's contacts, like to nurture those. It would also be like, I was blessed, like my mum was an educator and my dad was into personal development. So at the age of 15, I did S training, which is the precursor to the Landmark Forum, which is a kind of a large group awareness training. So I would say to people, spend 5 or 10% of your salary improving yourself. Right? Don't just go on holiday, go on retreat. And I don't mean necessarily go to a retreat center, but spend time investing in your skill set. Like one of the brilliant people I walked with this week was just talking about when he was recently asked to create a dictionary, a bibliography of what is learning. And it's like just listing it. And we did courses together in the 90s, and it's like, invest in that stuff, right? Because when I ask people like, well, what learning have you done? What investment have you made in yourself? It's really, really telling like what they are investing in. So if somebody says to me like, that seemed, to that book, that course sounds expensive. Like, why? It's not more expensive than an iPhone. So like invest in your own software, not just the hardware.
I love it. It's so powerful. It's an easy one to forget in a time where there's so much we can spend our money on, where marketing is trying to grab our attention from every angle. And, but the best source of marketing is the wisdom we have within to go, what do we really need? and to just, again, a little reframe. Gavin, the show is called Lost in Searching, and I have an ending question I'm giving to everyone. Are there any answers in life that you are still searching for?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm searching. I mean, I'm still searching how to be the best parent and lover. Still searching for that. I genuinely don't know. I am challenged every time I interact with my children. If I'm really honest, like I'm challenged. So I don't know the answer to how to be the best father I can be. And I'm not stupid enough, unfortunately, to think that I'm going to get the answer, right? And I think that's so I don't know that. I also like, and this is one of the things that it's incredible, like I am on the search to be able to make the best hummus, right? But I don't think, and I make sexual hummus, there's no doubt about it, but I'm not stupid enough to think that it won't get better. Like I want to, I like, so, and I want to know how to cook so many different things, like, and how to cook different kinds of cuisine, but I'll always be searching for that. Like I hope I will. I'll always be searching for like how to cook better food, how to create better recipes, how to have better relationships.
Yeah. I bet people will be thinking, why is he talking about hummus? But actually, I love the framing, the perspective is like, there may be things we will always be searching for that will never end because stagnation is death.
Yeah.
Because that is the spice of life. That's the essence of being alive. And knowing that your goalposts will always be further than where you are now continues to give you more to enjoy searching for and enjoy experiencing and enjoy learning and enjoy growing.
Like, have you ever had a souffle pancake?
I don't think I have.
Right.
Maybe, but I don't think I have.
So souffle pancakes they come from I think Taiwan, and you see them in like you've got to have one. It's like, so the souffle pancake, you get them in these Chinese bubble tea shops.
Okay.
Right. Actually, I think it's Taiwan.
Yeah, bubble tea is Taiwanese originally.
Yeah. So in these Taiwanese shops, you get this thing called a souffle pancake, right? And it's basically like a pancake, but it's like souffle fluffed up. Right? And like when I saw them, when I first had one, I was like, that's just amazing. I started looking into it because that's what I do. Like, how do you make them and where do they come from? And like, and they come from Taiwan. So is this something they had? No, not something. It's not an ancient Taiwanese thing. It's like it's like a perfection of the pancake, right? It's like you mix a pancake and you put a souffle together. You get this incredibly, and anyone who hasn't had a souffle pancake, it's a totally brand new experience, and it's only been on the planet for like 10 years or something, right? And it's been in this country for like a year or whatever. And that to me is just like a beautiful expression, of food, particularly. We are in such an incredible exploration with food. So it wouldn't surprise me if there is a better hummus in the future than has even been made because of a blending of something we learned somewhere else.
Oh, got you. Yeah. Don't be confined to the context in which you started to learn the thing.
Totally. I used to listen. I used to be totally like, I like when I saw like caramelized onion hummus, like in like Waitrose. Firstly, I can't stand the idea of hummus in a plastic pot. Just thinking this like it's not that I don't like it. But when I saw caramelized onion hummus and beetroot hummus, stop hummus. Hummus is chickpeas, tahina, garlic, salt. No, that's not hummus. And I wanted to write, and then I realized messing about making some hummus, and I've got some beets. I think, what happens if you throw this together? Right? And then I'm like, actually, this is really not. Yeah, it's hummus. Yeah, it's beetroot. Yeah, it's not what the ancient, Mesopotamians or whoever made hummus. Like, it's not original hummus, but it's still, you could call it what you like, right? call it a spread, but if people want to call it hummus, and they prefer it with a bit of beetroot in it or caramelized onion or whatever it might be, it's okay to innovate, to develop. And I think for me, the secret to being engaged and being is knowing that there's more to learn.
I love that. What a beautiful note to end on. Gavin, thank you so much for the conversation today. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and to share your wisdom and share your analogies about hummus, but also for believing in what I'm doing here. You know, you're one of the first people I'm chatting to here, and to one of the things you mentioned earlier around, you know, building trust and trusting relationships. I'm kind of starting the show based on the trusting relationships I've built over my career the last 3 to 5 years. And it just means so much to me to have that and have access to that and to be able to share the kind of things you're able to share with us, the wisdom you're able to share with us, with the people at home who are just like myself and yourself are all on journeys of our own. So thank you. I appreciate
Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. We chose a beautiful spot.
We
The sun's
did.
now come out.
It's a great way to end.
Absolutely beautiful. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you. Hey everyone, I hope you've enjoyed the show so far. I just wanted to take one quick sec to ask you for a huge favor. If you've been appreciating the show, the guests, the lessons, the journey we've been on, then the best way you can help out, to help me and help everybody else listening to this, is to subscribe to the show wherever you are. YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you're watching the show, hit the subscribe or follow or whatever other button and all the bells and icons, whatever else you're happy to keep up to date with the show, hear about new episodes as soon as they launch, and help us to grow and reach more people. I know you've heard this before, but it's because it really does help. It really would help out and makes the world of difference to me. So thank you in advance. And honestly, I really appreciate you. And one final quick note here. I wanted to draw your attention to my free weekly newsletter discussing a variety of topics to do with leadership development and discovery over on Substack. I'm always so humbled by all of the kind words of support I've received over the years from people reading my newsletters about how interesting or helpful that they've been. So if you want that extra hit of thought-provoking conversation once a week, then you can find that in the show notes down below. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And let's get it.